And what I'm doing is basically looking at some data again. Where is it now? Oh, here. So, with you, this is, well, if you can, this is my dissertation from long ago. So my data I collected in 1996. I had 57 or 50 something. Yeah, in Atlas now it's 55 interviews. So a lot and lots of interviews. And of course, what we did the last 30 something years, we were, if you use the software, we were coding data. And my thesis now is, well, we won't be needing coding data anymore. And I show you how this can be actually done. And I think it's not like what you see, a lot of promises that you see, you press on a button, AI is doing it, everything for you. I'm not believing in that. So it's still, I believe in the interaction and what, now it's a professor, Ethan Mollick. That's a good book if you want to learn something about AI, co-intelligence, working and living with AI. The book with the apple. Ethan Mollick professor, and he's just been voted under the 100 most influential people in AI. And yeah, so that's also kind of the way I think we need to work together with the AI assistant, that we can just believe what it says. And you will also see that said in my dialogue. But from my last webinars, I experienced people don't have an idea yet. They all want to use AI for categorizing data. It's all like in their head, we need to categorize it. And it kind of can categorize, but it cannot code. I think that's two different things. I can suggest codes, but coding is a whole different process, also very iterative type of process. And what did we do when we coded data? Well, we needed to tag data in order to then pull out the stuff that we have been coding. So it was kind of a way of managing, organizing our data, and then to then do something with it. So let me start there. So we go back to, 1999, something like that. That's when I coded my data. So it was, around that time. So it was data collection period, and I was working on a project in England, in the UK, and then at some point, when I went back to Germany to put it all together, I started to code in Atlas. And of course, it was not Atlas as we see it now. That's the latest version. It was Atlas version 4. So it was no colors. And that's why, on purpose, I took away all the colors. I had been kind of doing some stuff on this project in the meantime to kind of also, of course, move it up the range, and so it to keep up with the version, and also to illustrate how I've been coding. So I would never teach now to code like this, because I didn't know anything about, you just code and now and then of course you would have something like before Atlas had the way to categorize with higher and lower order codes. You need to use all of these like prefixes. And so I, started to use prefixing to organize codes in Atlas. And you can see, as you can see here, if you're not familiar with Atlas, this is just done after the fact, just to make a point here, that I should have done something with this, what I now call a monster code. So I just collected everything on definition of impulse buying 157 times. So I did something kind of in networks later in the analysis, but in the coding, I didn't really know yet how to, now it's a function in programs, because it's a standard thing people do. They split. So if they have created monster code like this, we need to actually split and create subcodes. Or if we code very, very on the data level, so we generate 600, 800 codes, so I have 183 here. We need to actually merge codes and summarize. So merge and split functionality that has become better and better also in the later years in the software. But so this how my coding looked like back then. So to just kind of give you an idea, and not the test code. That was, and I have an updated version of this, which I did a bit later, and I just now also still had all the prefixes in it because I didn't bother taking them out. But now, of course, we can have like categories and subcodes. But this is a modified version that for some summer school, I kind of sat down and actually did differentiate, all my codes here, like impulse buying, the monster code, and planned buying, well, and to create subcode. So I didn't do that while I was writing my dissertation, and it was also very early days in working with those type of software. But this is, where I started to learn. At some point, got the idea with prefixes, and everybody started to use prefixes before, technology actually moved us on. So also the way we worked with characters programs like, Atlas, MaxQDA, and Vivo, their technology also helped us to do things differently. But of course, it's always within coding, so we could like code data better. But you can imagine these are 55 interviews. Some were half an hour long, some were like 3-4 hours long. And you can get a little bit about what the topics are. So you can kind of guess what this topic is. It's on impulse buying, impulse buying, but with different shopper groups. So I talked to people which I called utilitarian buyers, and with an extreme case of shopping addiction. So the title of my thesis is Self-Concept and Identity in a Consumer Society. Because, addicted shoppers don't buy because, it's a good deal or whatever, because they buy for compensating emotional needs. So it's all about self-identity and closing a gap, whatever gap they experience in who they want to be. So this was this project all about. All of these interviews were conducted in England, and I had about equal groups. Do I have? Yeah, you see here now, if I go to my documents, equal groups of addicted buyers, 18, and utilitarian, and like the middle ones. I think most of us are probably compensatory buyers, so we sometimes buy because we had a bad day or it's raining all the time or whatever, like for like emotional reasons, but not all the time. And utilitarian buyers, some of them only buy if they more or less don't like shopping that much. So how we measured all of that. So we had it was a quantitative study. So we had scales where we could identify that, and you see the self-discrepancy scores and all of that. So it was some quant stuff mixed in within the mix as well. So that's why we know. But so this was now, almost kind of 30 years ago. Now let's kind of make the jump into the times of AI. So how can we deal with those data now without having to go through coding first? I was literally sitting there 2 weeks, Saturday, Sunday, because I wanted to be consistent in the coding, or mostly consistent, and 8 hours or whatever a day, I was just coding those data 14 days in a row to just kind of get it done, and to not like stop and then we don't know where you were and you don't have the data in your mind anymore. So and then you could kind of start doing something with those coded data. Now let's go to Q Insights. That's the app I'm developing right now. So we can directly try it in here. So of course you can always try also using any AI assistant. The nice thing here is about, of course, it's a more purpose built for qualitative analysis, and also in terms of handling data, amounts of data and so on. So basically, you log in. It's a SaaS, so it's a web application. So I'm logged in now. I created a project, and so in with the project, you can give the AI some information about your project, so it kind of knows a bit of a background, and then you upload documents. So for the sake of just kind of demonstrating it, I didn't upload all of the documents, but just as a subset. I did over sample a bit the addictive ones, because that's where the focus is on. So what you see here in the numbers is the score, gap, and age. Score, and what we can do now here, for those who have seen an earlier version of that, I can identify variables and set them as filters. So here I have the shopper types in my document, my document variables, and I can now focus my analysis on only addicted shoppers or compensatory shoppers, or utilitarian one. That's just ignore that. It's just me kind of reducing the. Yeah, these are all addicted shoppers, and this is kind of a subgroup of addicted shoppers. So you can set a filter, and then all analysis that is done is now only focusing on addicted shoppers. You see the software is then selecting the data within the filter. And what I want to focus on now is the conversational analysis. And that really points out the interactive part with the AI. Theme analysis is kind of, the software extracts themes, and there's the need also again to chat with those themes. I mean, with everything, with all the options you have here, you can interact. Because we will also see when we now look at the what I've been doing, that you do need to kind of say, no, I don't see it like that, and I would look at it differently and stuff. And also with the themes, it's you can't never really fully rely on the AI. That's why I said interaction is so important. So I go to the archived analysis now. We are on a beta server, so it's not incredibly fast, so we don't always have to kind of wait. So we go through the analysis I've now done on this one aspect. And we are busy now with releasing beta version, trying to get ready. So, I didn't spend ages on this. So it's like, so I can say that like 2 hours of work. So you can kind of see, what you can do in 2 hours and what you can already get out without even coding data. And of course, then, you can, that's not my entire dissertation done, of course, but it would be a lot, I think a lot less time consuming, working through more topics than just these two. So I focused on how they, we will see on what I focus on. So I started now very, very openly, and I want to know what they tell me about impulse buying. So I just ask a very general question, kind of to see what it comes up with. And then it starts with pulling out some data. So I'm not looking for like, give me, the aspects of impulse buying. I'm not asking for categories. I'm just asking for content. And while I work and ask for content, then I'm trying to, look at where there might be more abstract categories that we can pull out and work with. So I want to get to know my data this way. Well, we assume, you know your data, you have gone through the transcription, so you have an idea, well, you have collected the data, and you also know kind of what you want to ask about your data. Some people always said, but if you ask kind of directed question, you might kind of miss things because you're not asking for it. Well, what you hopefully also will see, because it pulls out things, and sometimes it might relate not directly to the question, but gives you another aspect, and then it triggers you to ask more questions and go into more depths. So Beverly is the one, she looks for sales and bargains, and Miss S, she defines impulse purchasing as something she likes without prior intention, and for him is a rare event usually triggered by something catching his eye. So just to give you, the top ones. So what are the types of items they purchase? So that's an easy question for an eye. You can just pull out, what it's clothing or it's shoes or household item, garden pots, CD types, books, whatever. So that's then a very easy question to get out. I write that Beverly something else, kind of something catches. She's not a new aspect. So I don't agree with what the eye has been telling me. So that Beverly sees something else is kind of the same as catching one's eye. That is not a new aspect. One new aspect, however, is fear of missing out, thinking that it might not be there anymore later. So how can we sum up the triggers for utilitarian bias? So I have been asking about triggers, so you're missing that part now. And then it was kind of saying, catching one's eyes and then putting it as a different thing. And I tell, well, that's kind of the same thing. So that's what I mean also with this interaction. And then if or itchy, whatever, then we have here now as triggers, sales or bargains, items catching the eye, fear of missing out because the item might not be there the next time. Yeah, and then I was asking, of course, that's because it's very important for addictive buyers. Do the responder mention that they might go out to buy something because they had a bad day? And we get a very clear answer that they explicitly say, no, we never actually do that when we buy on impulse. So now I wanted to look at motivation and was giving it then a definition of saying, like, motivation is the underlying desire, but trigger is an external factor. Then did I also say that I did write here that I do think that I think fear of missing out is actually an internal thing and not an external an external trigger. So I would put that here as underlying motivation. So you see that I'm interfering here with the answers that the AI has given me. And here it says desire for bargains, which I initially kind of then in my response said, well, desire is not an underlying desire, but more an outside situational trigger that from my first reading kind of the data, well, kind of we will go back to that later when we talk more about emotions. So at first I was kind of disagreeing with what the AI was giving me, asking a bit more in depth. Okay, so what does he else say about bargains here? And I get some quotes. And by the way, if you're in the active chat, this is the archive chat, you can always kind of check the quotes behind it, so on which data is based, so that you don't get that in the archive. But you can always ask for quotes as well, and you might have quotes in the data. So now I move on to social influence and want to know more about that because it was mentioned. And then I said, if so, I see, so I don't think we can put social influence down as underlying motivation factor. Then we have fear of missing out and desire for fun, enjoyment. Can you summarize this for me? Yeah, so I decided again what I wanted to have as underlying factors and what I didn't want to have. So we kind of get that. And now I wanted to talk about financial consideration. So it pulls out the financial consideration. Basically what it says here, well, that they all do consider their finances when buying on impulse. And they do careful planning and stuff like that. There comes issues with regret in here, but I'm not focusing on the regret now. Right now, that would be a different topic I would be talking about in a different chat, because of course regret is an important aspect here. And so I was questioning the regret and laziness as a financial consideration, and I said, well, he doesn't want to bring back the items, but that might more be than the financial part, more like be a waste of money, because he's not bringing it back. So you see how I kind of engage with the data here, and then he brings up something new here. So just to say what happens. I mean, ask for financial consideration, and then the AI gives me something on impulse buying as a treat. And maybe it kind of was triggered because of a luxury or more expensive item that kind of brings it up as financial consideration. But it's for you to then sort this into make it coherent and put it into kind of if you think in perspective categories, whatever you want, or like areas you want to discuss. So I was then asking, okay, that's an interesting aspect. Do the other respondent also talk about this? So to kind of say, go back to the data, see whether other respondents also talk about this being a treat or a luxury. So for Alan, it is the case, and for Miss S, she also, she refers to luxury shopping as more fun, and that relates to that other episode she talked about when she was talking when she was buying with her sister.
I have a quick question, if I can, Suzanne.
Yeah.
One thing I'm noticing is that it always gives you examples of 3 respondents.
Because I filtered for 3.
Oh, you did? Okay, I missed that.
For this particular, I don't have like the full data set on here. I just wanted to, get to kind of just show the principles of it. So I did filter here for 3 respondents. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be a bit more work if you have this in one group 6 or 7. It would take a bit, because I do like to also ask for specific respondents and not get like an overall picture, but like zoom into particular respondents. But in sake of time, I just focus on these 3. Yeah, and this here then triggered something else when I was reading this, and this was when we talked about bargains before. When I first said, okay, this bargain is, you see something on sale and then you buy it. Is more an external trigger. But here she says, I'm buying because I feel as if I've done well to get something at a reduced price. So this has a more emotional benefit. So that it gives her a lift, or it boosts her self-worth, or gives a feeling of accomplishment. So this is then not a trigger, but we can say as and count that also as an emotional component. And then I was moving into emotional components here. Yes, what did I ask here? What about Alan and Miss S? Do they share a similar experience as Beverly? And then, well, it comes up with what we had before, the same with the fun and the luxury as a treat. So I didn't learn anything new. Apparently, there wasn't anything more. Sometimes, you ask again, and I ask again here based on the data. Is that, I kind of, it didn't come up with something new. So apparently that was all what's there in the data. So if you take a closer look again, do you find something else? No, it didn't find something else. It came up with same again. So now I wanted to summarize the conversation from the start, but that didn't work. That might have to do still with, because it started somewhere in the middle. But this has to do with the setup here, because it's like how much of the conversation we remember is something we can set. But you always have to be careful with that in terms of the so-called context window. And I want to talk about all of this, but you cannot like endlessly, there's a number of pages you can send to the LLM. The more you remember from your conversation, you already kind of take up some of that memory. So that's why here it's not set to like going all the conversation. So that's why then I went through the conversation and kind of copy and pasted the things I wanted. That's why it looks like this, not formatted very well. And then kind of said, okay, this is all the points. And I also adjusted it took out points that I didn't want to have in there. And, again, made a decision for not, didn't take over what the AI said, but made a decision for what I think would be appropriate and put it in there, and then ask it to like kind of, put this all in a nice summary form for me. So now we have an overview of the type of impulse buying, reminder impulse suggesting, no prior content. We have the triggers, sales or bargain, items catching your eyes, underlying motivations, fear of missing out, social influence, desire for enjoyment, and so on. And then we have these, what I call, these vignettes for the respondents. And then another nice thing you can do is you can ask AI to create overview tables. So now for each of these, and you can give different instructions how you want to have it. So ask it now we can look at the prompt here. Can it create an overview table for me with the respondent names in the columns and the various aspects in the rows, like type, trigger, motivation, types of items purchased on impulse, and financial consideration. Separate the various main aspects visually in the table. So that's why we get like, grays, different types of grays. And then what it did here, then actually I didn't ask it for it, but for each kind of type of impulse buying, it gave me a quote where it fitted with the respondents. Sometimes, depending on what I do, I ask it to only kind of put an X for, yes, no, does it occur, doesn't it occur? But if you work with, not that many respondents, it might also be okay to have a quote for each of these. So we have triggers, we have underlying motivations, types of purchase, items purchased, and then financial consideration. So we work now through the utilitarian bias, and here we work through 4 of the addicted bias. So just to, to see in the chat, I asked which documents are in the analysis, so it pulled it out. So I also have it like in the reference here. Again, I asked, tell me about impulse buying. So we can immediately see a completely different picture here. We get emotional triggers, immediate gratification, regret and guilt, compensation for emotional deficits, financial consequences. And if you read it, impulse buying often leads to financial problems, including debt. So we get a complete different picture immediately. But I got kind of a first answer here, but then I said, let's take it kind of comparable to what I did before. Let's talk about the types of impulse buying. Do you find something like reminder impulse buying, suggesting impulse buying, pure impulse buying, and whether something is needed or not? So I now directed it to make it comparable to my previous conversation. And then it pulled out examples for reminder, suggestion, and pure impulse buying. So reminder, suggestion, impulse buys happened with utilitarian as well as addicted bias, and with some nuances because we get the descriptions for it. And then I talked about triggers. Again, because every conversation is new, it doesn't remember what I said it before. So I again said it, triggers are external, situational factors, underlying emotions are, so there's a difference. So here we got sales and discounts, store displays and environment, time to kill. So that's something, waiting for a bus. So in the sense, you can see that as an external factor as well. Bus is too late or train is too late. What do we do? We shop. And here it puts emotional states in as triggers. Of course, emotional triggers, you can also call it that. But I wouldn't, I would not put that as external triggers and then say, okay, that's part of the underlying emotional ones. And I then copied whatever it gave me here, also like look at boredom, self-esteem, and whatever it gave me there. And let's look at that. So now we're looking at emotional triggers, and you immediately see the difference with utilitarian bias. So it's, feeling put down or being put down. We have boredom, we have low self-esteem, we have need of poor confidence boost. Here, the AI is not very good in distinguishing between, because low self-esteem is, well, it's kind of more like a state, but when I talk about underlying emotion, then it's the need for confidence boost. And of course, the aim is to compensate for low self-esteem. But then I realized it only gave me something from Chris and Christina, and whereas Donna and Margaret. So the AI is not always giving you everything. So you have to kind of then prompt and say, well, what about Donna and Margaret? And then I got a more extensive response from Donna and Margaret as well. So to get a complete picture. So you have to be there and be the sparring partner to see what's happening. So let's see what we have now. Sorry about now. So let's see what we have. Feelings put down, need for confidence boosts, need for comfort, need for escape from routine life, boring, job, escape, fear, depression, need to feel more in control of one's life. Can you summarize that for me? So I was pulling everything out of these answers, what I think would be fitting, and then ask again to neatly write that down for me. So now we have a nice list of all these underlying motivational factors that leads to an impulse purchase for this type of group. And then it did only give here need of comfort, gave me an example of Donner, but when we read that up here, Margaret also was actually talking about a need for comfort, and she was also, or was it, yeah, there were two people talking about need for comfort and also for control in her life. So Donna talks about control as well and about escape. So I was then pulling up the, the threads and kind of said, there were, so please consider that and rewrite, so we get a more complete picture. And then of course it does that. It's nice to pull that to pull it all together for us. And then I ask for financial consideration. And here we see immediately often biasing so impulse without, considering her financial situation. And then also it's all about credit cards without considering financial situation. So we get that for everybody buying things on impulse without considering. So we get a very clear picture that there is no financial consideration because emotional needs are more important. And so I let it summarize again on the financial situation. And then we talked about the type of items. I didn't ask about that before, so I just quickly kind of asked for the type of items purchased. It's also very funny. Necklaces, curtains, tumble dryers, tapes, and clothes. Yeah. But so could be basically the anything. But yeah, so people focus also on different things, also depending on their budget. But I didn't now go into detail, but if you kind of think, oh, that's interesting, you could ask in the next prompt, well, Christina bought like a tumble dryer on impulse, tell me that story. Yeah, so now based on what comes out, you can just give, ask then for further detail if you wanted to and go into depth. So I did the summing up again here, and yeah, so then I got this summed up type of impulse. You could do it in its own separate kind of section. But what I did here in this prompt is also asking for a direct quote to illustrate. So for each and every point now, I also got a direct quote in this kind of summary section. And what I did before was asking for a table, and this is AI. It's I kind of copied the same prompt from before, just adding. I had some other aspect here, the benefits that I didn't have with the other ones, and then it created a different table as before. It just gave the aspects here, and then it kind of said what applies to each person, or most likely. And then I ask, okay, let's break this down, make different tables for each respondents, because to have the quotes again. So then I ask only for the types of purchase, and then I got the types of purchases and asked for the triggers, and so we got kind of something similar than we had before. And again, for each of these tables, you could ask, of course, follow-up questions again if you want more quotes, or say, weren't there any examples of pure impulse buying for the others, things like that. But so let's stay here. So we got within a very short period of time a nice overview. And also, see immediately the difference between utilitarian bias, because I picked on purpose the two extreme groups. Compensatory are somewhere in the middle. And we could see that both groups engage in the same type of impulse buying. Some of the triggers are the same, but there are other triggers for addicted buyers, and the underlying motivations are completely different. The benefits mentions are completely different. Now we could also compare the items that are bought on impulse. Yeah, nobody was saying feeling a high with the utilitarian shoppers, and excitement and sense of power, release of tension. So very strong emotional benefits here mentioned, as compared what we had with the one person, Beverly, was that she felt accomplished. when she bought something about, when she bought a bargain, something on sale. So we got a little bit of that, but not as strong as here. So it's a very short period of time we could pull that out without having coded the data. And I can show you a table I have in my dissertation here. So I pulled things out, and of course I coded, I could kind of count it, and this is of course the complete data. But yeah, it's not exactly the same. Some of the, but you can kind of see what I did here, and this is not about the emotional aspects. There are other tables here that I pulled out, and then of course wrote about and gave some quotes as well for addictive bias and compensatory bias and utilitarian bias. But this looks at how it looked in my dissertation based on the data I've coded, and I would say that within the shorter amount of spending now 2 hours with it, not even remembering so much about my data anymore, but I probably got a kind of good sense of what's happening in the data with that one aspect we have focused on. And yeah, that's the last thing I want to show, and then we can open it up for discussion. Is that this project? Yeah. Put this up. So I did make some networks. So I did break up that monster code by working with my monster code. And this is the one for addicted bias. So we have financial consideration, disregard of consequences. We have psychological aspect, for the sake of buying, wanting a lift, extra, shop urge. And then we have suggestion, impulse bias, not needed, could do without luxury. So it is not exactly, the same, but we can kind of see some of the aspects coming back. And we would, if there's something aspect is, unexpected is a psychological aspect, we can debate that after we know now what we know after talking to the data. And this is a definition of impulse buying from the compensatory bias. We didn't look at those, but let's look at the utilitarian bias. So financial consideration, if it's in budget, not within budget, well, might be some. We only have looked at 3 people here where they all said it's always within the budget. Treat indulgence, yeah, we saw that. And we saw these 3 aspects also as type of buying. So this is kind of also what I pulled out, but I guess that was much more labor intensive to actually get to that phase here than what we did with just asking questions about our data.
Totally. Thank you very much, Susanne, for the presentation or for showing your work. And I really love this application. I haven't seen it before. So I'm on the time of 15 years ago when I had a workshop with you. I totally agree to Sam. But I think it's one crucial point of about the acceptance of this kind of technology in using or in conducting QDA is how far it can be made transparent on which database the different answers will come. So what you say, you can always ask for the quotations in which documents we have the quotations.
Yeah, well,
so I think this might be crucial to have this function to when you have the summaries at the end, and you can make the connections to the documents. That's a really powerful function to create the or to support the acceptance.
Yeah.
What I was, maybe just given a, would you comment on that?
So I start again, very general, that now the next kind of conversation could be about, how do they define plant buying, what kind of items they buy, plant and all that kind of stuff. So let's, just assume, we would start a new conversation. So I would, for every topic I am, want to talk about it, start a new conversation. And now we can go and show quotes. And and then we get some example quotes here. Sometimes we get also more than, so this is the way to go. So this is, you ask the AI for themes, what are the main topics they're talking about. So this is a prompt behind there, basically asking for themes, so nothing and then you can see in how many of the documents the theme occurs. But what I want to show now is, so then it pulls up a preview of the document, and then it brings you to the part of the document where it got the idea from. Yeah.
It looks good to me. But maybe I can place here another question. The themes that you used here, did you pre-configured them, so you set up that's planned buying or that's impulse buying?
No, this is the theme the AI puts out. So behind the scene,
okay,
so to speak, we have, well, it's a prompt we wrote, like to tell the AI to pull out themes. So it's basically what you would type in, if you chat with an AI system, so please pull out the themes, make sure that they don't overlap, blah, blah, blah. So because it's kind of a standard thing people want to do, so we kind of built that in so you don't have to prompt yourself. So you can either start with the conversation or you start with a theme. And I didn't show that now, but with every option, you then can also go into conversation. You then say, okay, this is an interesting theme that the AI suggested, and then you can go open a chat and start asking questions about that particular theme. So go into that same kind of conversation that I just showed you now. So it's just a little different.
Yep. Are you working on that, or is there already an option to add context information, as we can do it with the large language models right now? So they are improving right now pretty much in this area, adding the context informations, maybe you could see it as adding some theorizing or sensitizing concepts to the AI.
Well, one thing is that if you set up your project, you add a project description. There I would give context about, this is an interview study or focus group, or these are the research questions, these are the main concepts. You can put that in the project description, because everything you put in the project description, we always send to the LLM as context. Yeah. The other thing is, like what I did in my conversation, I gave it the definition, what I think underlying motivation, what the triggers are. Yeah, so that you in the chat, you can then kind of say, my sensitizing concept is blah. Yeah, and do you find that in the data? So throughout, you can give some context as well. And it does, it does behave a bit different than, the normal, we do use OpenAI right now for, and also practicing. It's kind of with my, I practice with Claude as well. And I think OpenAI still was giving the better answers, but still do we use 4.0 or for whatever, it's still, so, and at some point we want to give you the option, you choose which model you want to work with. But right now, it's been the beginning. But like just as I said, I of course also practice with whatever ChatGPT does, and this, even though it uses the same model, it kind of behaves a bit differently. So we also have to, I think the more you groove in with your chat, you will figure out how it works. Because what I wanted to say is, it does because the main focus is to work only with your data, to not look in the whatever it has been trained on, to avoid hallucination. So it really much always focuses on your data only, but you can trigger it in your prompt to actually draw on its wider knowledge.